Well, hello friends and welcome back. I'm Warda Majir and I'm one of the bros of Broheim. So welcome to Broheim. Today we're going to have a little bit of a different episode here for the Dragon Age Origins Lorethrough. What we're going to do is, first off, we're going to level up our character here. And then after that, I'm going to run around the camp and I'm going to gather up the 8 different codexes that are littered throughout the camp. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have some story time, and I'm going to read, and then we're going to spend some time discussing them, and I'm going to kind of introduce where all these different ideas fit into the lore. So, let's jump right into it, shall we? We're going to grab heal here as the first spell that for our level up, mainly because, as I said, we're gonna do that blood mage spirit healer. But yeah, so we got to start getting our healing spells, of course. I don't know if we're gonna go all the way through this tree to the mass rejuvenation, but we'll definitely end up going through to regeneration pretty early on. Cool. So, I'm going to start running around and gathering those codexes, and I will see you guys on the other side. Elgar'nan, God of Vengeance. Long ago, when time itself was young, the only things in existence were the sun and the land. The sun, curious about the land, bowed his head close to her body, and Elgar'nan was born in the place where they touched. The sun and the land loved Elgar'nan greatly, for he was beautiful and clever. As a gift to Elgar'nan, the land brought forth great birds and beasts of sky and forest, and all manner of wonderful green things. Elgar'nan loved his mother's gifts, and praised them highly, and walked amongst them often. The sun, looking down upon the fruitful land, saw the joy that Elgar'nan took in her works, and grew jealous. Out of spite, he shone his face full upon all the creatures the earth had created, and burned them all to ashes. The land cracked and split from bitterness and pain, and cried salt tears for the loss of all she had wrought. The pool of tears cried for the land became the ocean, and the cracks in her body the first rivers and streams. Elgar'nan was furious at what his father had done and vowed vengeance. He lifted himself into the sky and wrestled the sun, determined to defeat him. They fought for an eternity, and eventually the sun grew weak, while Elgar'nan's rage was unabated. Eventually, Elgar'nan threw the sun down from the sky and buried him in a deep abyss created by the land's sorrow. With the sun gone and the world was covered in shadow, and all that remained in the sky were the remainders of Elgar'nan's battle with his father, drops of the sun's lifeblood, which twinkled and shimmered in the darkness. From the tales of Elgar'nan and the sun, as told by Gisharel, Keeper of the Ralliferan clan of the Daily Shelves. So that's pretty cool. First off, we have our creation story of the world, according to the elves. But more than that, we have the introduction of the Zeus character, right? The father of the pantheon. The head honcho, the king of kings, right? Elgar'nan, God of Vengeance. So, this is a cool guy. I personally am very, very fascinated with the lore when it comes to the gods and stuff like that in this world. So, as we kind of start working our way through this series, I am just so psyched to start discussing this more with you guys, because of course I want to avoid spoilers, so I will provide as much information as I can when I can. Anywho, let's talk about the next god in the pantheon. Fen'Harel, the Dread Wolf. Perhaps my favorite. Fen'Harel, the Dread Wolf. There is precious little we know about Fen-Harel, for they say he did not care for our people. Elgar'nan and Mythal created the world as we know it, Andruil taught us the ways of the hunt, Silas and June gave us fire and crafting, but Fen-Harel kept to himself and plotted the betrayal of all the gods. And after the destruction of Arlathan, when the gods could no longer hear our prayers, it is said that Fen-Harel spent centuries in a far corner of the earth, giggling madly and hugging himself in glee. The legends say that before the fall of Arlathan, and the gods we know and revere fought an endless war with others of their kind. There is not a Heren amongst us who does not remember these others. Only in dreams do we hear whispered the names of Gauduran and Dernthal and Anaris. For they are the forgotten ones, the gods of terror and malice, spite and pestilence. In ancient times, only Fen-Harel could walk without fear among both our gods and the Forgotten Ones. For although he is kin to the gods of the people, the Forgotten Ones knew of his cunning ways and saw him as one of their own. And that is how Fen-Harel tricked them. Our gods saw him as brother, and they trusted him when he said that they must keep to the heavens while he arranged a truce. And the Forgotten Ones trusted him also when he said he would arrange for the defeat of our gods. If only the Forgotten Ones would return to the Abyss for a time. They trusted Fen-Harel, and they were all of them betrayed, and Fen-Harel sealed them away so they could never again walk among the people. From the tale of Fen-Harel's triumph, as told by Gisharel, keeper of the Ralaferan clan of the Dalish Elves. So Fen-Harel, man, he is by far my favorite of the gods. I really like Fen-Harel. For one, I'm always a fan of trickster gods. They're just so much more interesting than other gods. So, like Loki is a good example, or Hermes in Greek mythology is also an excellent example. Like, trickster gods are so much fun. They, for one, are never just black or white. It's so much more gray. So, but beyond that, he's also, in Dalish lore, the one responsible for the gods being sealed away. And even further, they go on to blame him for the fall of Arlathan, because if the gods had been present, they would have never allowed the people to fall, right? So, that's, he is by far probably the most interesting of the gods. There is one exception, but that doesn't really become prevalent until the third game, so. In any case, let's move on to the next one. Gillanine, mother of the Hala. They say Gillanine was one of the people in the days before Arlathan, and the chosen of Andruil the huntress. She was very beautiful, with hair of snowy white, and as graceful as a gazelle. She kept always to Andruil's ways, and Andruil favored her above all others. One day, while hunting in the forest, Gillanine came across a hunter she did not know. At his feet lay a hawk, shot through the heart by an arrow. Gillanine was filled with rage, for the hawk, along with the hare, was an animal much beloved of Andruil. Gillanine demanded that the hunter make an offering to Andruil in exchange for taking the life of one of her creatures. The hunter refused, and Gillanine called upon the goddess to curse him so that he could never again hunt and kill a living creature. Gillanine's curse took hold, and the hunter found that he was unable to hunt. His prey would dart out of sight, and his arrows would fly astray. His friends and family began to mock him for his impotence, and what use is a hunter who cannot hunt? Ashamed, the hunter swore he would find Gillanine and repay her for what she had done to him. He found Gillenine while she was out on a hunt with her sisters, and lured her away from them with lies and false words. He told Gillenine that he had learned his lesson and begged her to come with him so she could teach him to make a proper offering to Andruil. Moved by his plea, Gillenine followed the hunter, and when they were away from all of her sisters, the hunter turned on Gillenine. He blinded her first, and then bound her as one would bind a kill fresh from the hunt. But because he was cursed, the hunter could not kill her. Instead, he left her for dead in the forest. And Gillenine prayed to the gods for help. She prayed to Elgaron for vengeance, to Mother Mythal to protect her, but above all, she prayed to Andruil. Andruil sent her hares to Gillenine, and they chewed through the ropes that bound her, but Gillenine was still wounded and blind, and could not find her way home. So Andruil turned her into a beautiful white deer, the first Hala, and Gillenine found her way back to her sisters, and led them to the hunter, who was brought to justice. And since that day, the Hala have guided the people, and have never led us astray, for they listened to the voice of Gillenine. From the tale of Gillenine, as told by Gisharel, keeper of the Ralafaran clan of the Dalish Elves. Man, this guy, Gisharel, man, he is the dude. He definitely knows. This keeper, he is definitely the keeper of knowledge. Like, I don't know if he's a current keeper or not, because I've never personally encountered Gisharel in the games, or in any of the literature surrounding the games. But in the Codex, man, he is one knowledgeable mofo, that is for sure. So, about this god now. This is kind of cool, because what this shows us is that in elven culture, it is possible for an elf, for a normal mortal, as far as you could consider ancient elves mortals, could ascend to become gods through deed or through worship or through whatever. They could ascend to divinity. Now, I don't really want to say much more on that currently, but I do just want to mention that as an important side note, something to be, stowed away for later, right? Because that definitely will come back, this idea of ascending to divinity. And now we have June, god of the craft. We dedicate all our crafts to June, for it is he who taught the people to bend the branches of trees to make our bows, and to fashion coverings of furs and iron bark. Without June, would we have the Aravel or the harnesses for our Hala? When the people were young, we wandered the forests without purpose. We drank from streams and ate the berries and nuts that we could find. We did not hunt, for we had no bows. We wore nothing, for we had no knowledge of spinning or needlecraft. We shivered in the cold nights, and we went hungry through the winters, when all the world was covered in ice and snow. Then Silas the Hearthkeeper came, and gave us fire, and taught us how to feed it with wood. June taught us how to fashion bows and arrows and knives, so that we could hunt. We never learned to cook the flesh of the creatures we hunted over Silas's fire. We learned to clothe ourselves in their furs and skins, and the people were no longer cold and hungry. As told by Gisharel, keeper of the Ralafaran clan of the Dalish Elves. The Dales. You will hear tales of the woman Andraste. The Shemlin named her prophet, bride of their maker. But we knew her as a war leader, one who, like us, had been a slave and dreamed of liberation. We joined her rebellion against the Imperium, and our heroes died beside her, unmourned, into winter bonfires. But we stayed with our so-called allies until the war ended. Our reward? A land in southern Orlais called the Dales. So we began the long walk to our new home. Ep3, the end of the journey, was our capital, built out of the reach of the humans. We could once again forget the incessant passage of time. Our people began the slow process of recovering the culture and traditions we had lost to slavery. But, alas, it was not to last. The Chantry first sent missionaries into the Dales, and then, when those were thrown out, Templars. We were driven from Ep3, scattered. Some took refuge in the cities of the Shemlin, living in squalor, tolerated only little better than vermin. We took a different path. We took to the wilderness, never stopping long enough to draw the notice of our Shemlin neighbors. In our self-imposed exile, we kept what remained of elven knowledge and culture alive. The end of the long walk, as told by, of course, Gisharel, Keeper of the Ralefaran clan of the Dalish Elves. So, the Dales, this is kind of a nice little introductory course to the Dales, but we're not really going to learn a whole lot more on these people in this area until Dragon Age Inquisition. Another good, I guess, piece of information for this would also be the Masked Empire, which takes place after Dragon Age 2 and right before Dragon Age Inquisition. So that's another one of the novels, and yeah, that one, it feels different than the other novels, but I highly recommend it. For reasons that I'll kind of get into, I guess, later on in the series. But in any case, let's move on. The City Elves. It is hard to tell our children about those of our people who have decided to live in the Shemlin cities. They ask, why would anyone want to be treated like that? And sometimes I do not know what to say. I do not understand it myself. They were freed, but they have returned to live in the service of their former masters. They are housed like animals in walled sections of the Shemlin cities. They do the meanest of tasks and are rewarded with nothing. Why? I do not know. We tell the children that the Elven are strong, that we are a proud people, but they hear of these city elves who choose to toil under the humans' heavy hand. How do we teach them pride when they know there are others who would allow themselves to be trampled into dust? So we tell them that these city elves are to be pitied, and that they have given up on their people, given up on their heritage. We tell them that some people are so used to being controlled that when freed, they know not what to do with themselves. They are weak and afraid of the unfamiliar, afraid of our life wandering, and above all, they are afraid even to hope that one day we may have a home of our own. Gisharel, Keeper of the Ralefaran clan of the Dalish Elves. Did he write this one too? Ah, of course he did. Arlathan, Part 1. Before the ages were named or numbered, our people were glorious and eternal and never changing. Like the great oak tree, they were ever constant in their traditions, strong in their roots, and ever reaching for the sky. They felt no need to rush when life was endless. They worshipped their gods for months at a time. Decisions came after decades of debate, and an introduction could last for years. From time to time, our ancestors would drift into centuries-long slumber, but this was not death. for we know they wandered the fade in dreams. In those ages our people called all the land Elvenon, which in the old language means place of our people. And at the center of the world stood the great city of Arlathan, a place of knowledge and debate, where the best of the ancient elves could go to trade knowledge, greet old friends, and settle disputes that had gone on for millennia. But while our ancestors were caught up in the forever cycle of ages, drifting through life at what we today would consider an intolerable pace, the world outside the lush forests and ancient trees was changing. The humans first arrived from Parvalan to the north, called Shemlin, or Quicklings by the ancients. The humans were pitiful creatures whose lives blinked by in an instant. When they first met the elves, the humans were brash and warlike, quick to anger and quicker to fight, with no patience for the unhurried pace of elven diplomacy. But the humans brought worse things than war with them. Our ancestors proved susceptible to human diseases, and for the first time in history, elves died of natural causes. What's more, those elves who spent time bartering and negotiating with humans found themselves aging, tainted by the humans' brash and impatient lives. Many believed that the ancient gods had judged them unworthy of their long lives and cast them down among the Quicklings. Our ancestors came to look upon the humans as parasites, which I understand is similar to the way the humans see our people in the cities. The ancient elves immediately moved to close Elvenon off from the humans, for fear that this quickening effect would crumble the civilization. The fall of Arlathan, as told by Gisharel, keeper of the Rothafiren clan, the Dalish elves. You ask what happened to Arlathan. Sadly, we do not know. Even those of us who keep the ancient lore have no record of what truly happened. What we have are accounts of the days before the fall and a fable of the whims of the gods. The human world was changing even as the elves slept. Clans and the tribes gave way to a powerful empire called Tevinter, which, and for what reason we do not know, moved to conquer Elvenon. When they breached the great city of Arlathan, our people, fearful of disease and loss of immortality, chose to flee rather than fight. With magic, demons, and even dragons at the behest, the Tevinter Imperium marched easily through Arlathan, destroying homes and galleries and amphitheaters that had stood for ages. Our people were corralled as slaves, and human contact quickened their veins until every captured elf turned mortal. The elves called to their ancient gods, but there was no answer. As to why the gods didn't answer, our people left only a legend. They say that Fen'Harel, the dread wolf and lord of tricksters, approached the ancient gods of good and evil and proposed a truce. The gods of good would remove themselves to heaven, and the lords of evil would exile themselves to the abyss. Neither group ever again to enter the other's lands. But the gods did not know that Fen'Harel had planned to betray them, and that by the time they realized the dread wolf's trickery, they were sealed in the respective realms, never again to interact with the mortal realm. It is a fable, to be sure, but those elves who travel the beyond claim that Fen'Harel still roams the world of dreams, keeping watch over the gods lest they escape from their prisons. Whatever the case, Arlathan had fallen to the very humans our people had once considered mere pests. It is said that the Tevinter Magisters used their great destructive power to force the very ground to swallow Arlathan whole, destroying eons of collected knowledge, culture, and art. The whole of Elven lore left only to memory. The fall of Arlathan as told by Gisharel, keeper of the Ralafaran clan of the Dalish Elves. Awesome. Alright, so a couple more things that we're gonna do real quick is first I want to touch on a couple things that were noted in those last two codex in regards to Arlathan and its fall. So first, it talks about how at one point all the land of this continent was known as Elvenon, which kind of explains why we found some elven, well, I guess elven lore, right? Statues of elven gods here in the Brazilian forest, all the way down in the southern eastern point of this continent. But also, it talks about how the humans came from the north, from Parvalan, which I find to be very interesting that this is where the first humans came from. Because as of right now, currently in 930 Dragon, that is where the Kunari live. That is the Kunari homeland. Humans haven't been known to live in Parvalan for a very long time, for probably thousands of years at this point. So it's very noteworthy to me, at least, that the first humans came from there. Inquisition is going to touch a lot more on everything that we just read about in that codex, but as of right now, I just wanted to kind of highlight those points there. Oh, and one other thing is that in that story, they claim that the Tevinter Imperium was responsible for the fall of Arlathan, and that's very important. Obviously, we're not really going to discuss why, because as of right now in the story, it's not known why, but it is another thing to kind of tuck away into your hat, right? Another thing to file away for later and to remember that it is claimed that the Tevinter Imperium destroyed Arlathan and enslaved the people after that, right? That the gods were gone before that. So, just remember that. So we're going to go around, we're going to gather the last couple things that we need before we venture back out into the forest to search for the mirror /Tamlin for the Keeper's sake. But yeah, so let's go around and do that real quick. The first thing we need to do is speak to Fenarel. Goodness, every time.
Is the Keeper sending you back to that cave to look for Tamlin?
Yes, I'm going with Meryl.
I want to go with you. Keeper Marathari probably won't approve, but I can help find Tamlin.
Alright, come with us.
Good. I'll follow you, just to make sure Meryl doesn't go running to the Keeper when you tell her I'm coming.
We'll just ask for the Keeper's permission. I don't know what you're talking about.
I see you have not left with Meryl yet. Is there something you need?
I want to bring Fenarel with us.
Fenarel? Are you certain? I'm already putting Meryl at risk. I don't want to lose you too.
I want to help, Keeper. If we can find Tamlin, it's worth the risk.
Very well, then. You have my permission. And thank you for asking for it.
Fenarel. Goodness gracious. Yeah, that name. Okay. I'll get it eventually, maybe one day, or I won't. Actually. That's where we're going to wrap this episode up here, because I'm pretty sure as soon as we talk to Meryl, we're going to head off into the woods. So, thank you guys so much for sticking it through with me. This was a pretty long episode. It was a little bit different, but I definitely had a lot of fun with it. A lot of lore to kind of, sift through there. A lot of introductions to different things there. We got a pretty good introductory course to a lot of the Elven Pantheon. We're still missing a few. We still have, I do believe we still have Dirthamen and Silas and Mythal. I do believe that was all of them. I think there's one other one that I'm forgetting. But, yeah, so, in any case, thank you guys so much for watching this episode. If you did like this episode, go ahead and like and subscribe. And, make sure and tune in for the next one. Have a great day, guys, and bye-bye now.